Hey guys, tonight we descend into darkness, literal and historical. You're stepping carefully through a narrow corridor. Your fingers brushing cold. Damp limestone walls. The air is thick with the scent of earth and mildew. And ahead, faint flickers of torchlight lick the bones stacked like books against the catacomb walls. It's the 2nd century in Rome. And you're walking into an illegal gathering. A nighttime assembly, not of thieves or drunkards, but of Christians. Not the cathedral dwelling, incense-swinging kind you might imagine today, but something much quieter and far more dangerous. They greet each other with hushed whispers and strange symbols scratched into stone. A fish, akros, the letters XP. Their children sleep in baskets behind them. No music? No choirs. Just fear. And faith wrapped so tightly together, you can barely tell where one ends and the other begins. And here's the kicker. You're not just watching this. You're part of it. You're here because you believe, or maybe you're here because you love someone who does. Either way, the risk is the same. Because here, in Imperial Rome, private belief isn't just personal, it's political. To worship a god who wasn't approved by the state was to question Rome itself. The emperor isn't just a ruler, he's divine. To claim loyalty to another king, say, a dead carpenter from Judea. Well, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your city and time in the comments. I always love seeing where you're listening from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You duck your head as someone seals the tunnel entrance behind you with a slab of stone. It's heavy, and the sound echoes like a tomb, shutting. In a way, it is. These catacombs are burial sites, built beneath the outskirts of the city, where Roman law and visibility begin to blur. Thousands of bodies lie beneath your feet. Pagans, Christians, everyone. Rome doesn't discriminate in death. It's life that gets tricky. The man leading the gathering, he's old, hunched, with a soft but certain voice. He begins to read aloud, not from a scroll, but from a stitched-together piece of parchment. The words don't sound like Roman poetry. They sound defiant. Blessed are the meek. He reads, and a woman near you closes her eyes, like he just described her entire life. You want to ask what comes next, but everyone is too focused, too quiet. Even the children don't cry. They know silence is the price of safety. Then the leader lowers the parchment. They raided Marcus's house. He whispers, took his wife. The children escaped. We don't know where they are. A shiver travels the room. No one screams. No one sobs. They just nod. Solemnly, like this is expected. And it is. The guards are getting better at finding them. Rome's nose is sharper than ever. It's not that Christianity is the only banned religion. Rome has a long tradition of crushing what it doesn't understand or what refuses to play by its rules. And Christianity, well, it's ticking off every checkbox. It's monotheistic, exclusive, and worst of all, invisible. No idols. No sacrifices. No colorful street processions to spy on. Just small gatherings like this one, scattered like embers across a map. You might be wondering, Didn't Rome have hundreds of gods? Weren't they tolerant? Yes. But Rome's tolerance had conditions. You could worship anyone you wanted, as long as you also worshipped the emperor and didn't disrupt social order. Early Christians failed both tests spectacularly. They refused to bow to the emperor. They wouldn't sacrifice at the state altars, and they definitely disrupted order. Not by riots or revolts, but by converting slaves, women, soldiers, even aristocrats. It made Rome nervous. Imagine if half your bureaucracy suddenly swore loyalty to someone crucified as a criminal. Still, persecution wasn't constant. It came in waves, depending on the emperor's mood, Rome's stability, and whether someone needed a convenient scapegoat. Right now, you're living in one of those waves. The kind where informers are paid, magistrates are edgy, and the smell of burning flesh sometimes drifts in from the forum. One time, a friend of yours, Julia, vanished after hosting a baptism. You never saw her again. But a few days later, her ring showed up on the hand of a senator's wife. Coincidence? Maybe. But in this world, jewelry changes owners faster than you blink. Historians still argue whether the early catacomb meetings were as organized as later legends claim. Some say it was chaos, random teachings, whispered prayers, an occasional fish carved into the dirt. Others think there was structure, even ritual. Tonight, you feel the pull of both the messiness of survival and the elegance of belief. You glance around. No guards. Not yet. But you know it's just a matter of time. Someone takes your hand, an older man with calloused fingers. He presses something into your palm. It's a coin. No. Not money. It's a carved token with the letters iota, chi, theta, upsilon, sigma, ichthys. The Greek word for fish. And a secret code for Jesus Christ. Son of God. Savior. You nod. You won't forget this. The night stretches on. A baby whimpers. The man with the parchment speaks again. He tells of Paul and Peter, of lions and prisons, of hope that rises when everything else collapses. Later, as the group disbands, you crawl back through the tunnels. The world above, still dreaming. You reach the street. A baker's cart rolls by. The scent of sesame and honey fills the air. You blend in. You don't look suspicious. You don't carry anything. Just a token. Just a whisper of faith. But in Rome, that whisper could be a death sentence. You wake the next morning to the noise of sandals on stone, the clatter of wooden carts, and the hawker cries of vendors calling out prices for olives, dates, and jugs of cheap Falernian wine. Rome stretches around you like a living thing, its walls breathing with gossip, ambition, and bureaucracy. You step carefully around a group of toga-clad men debating some minor legal matter near the Basilica Julia. It's all very public, very structured, very Roman. Religion here isn't private. It's political theater, civic duty, and social identity rolled into one. The Vestal virgins walk past in their ivory robes, heads held high, guardians of the city's sacred flame. Behind them, a small procession heads toward the Temple of Jupiter. With incense in hand and musicians playing pipes that you swear are out of tune, but no one seems to care. The spectacle is the point. Rome's religion isn't just polytheistic, it's polyfunctional. Gods for war, Gods for wheat, cots for doors, crossroads, childbirth, taxes. Every domain has its deity. And crucially, each one is tied to the state. To be Roman is to participate in these rituals. To not participate is to reject the very fabric of society. You, however, are on the outside looking in. You still walk the same streets, but you flinch when someone swears by Mars. And you pretend to drop a coin when someone mentions making an offering, because you know too well that to refuse is to stand out, and standing out gets you noticed. And yet, Rome says it's tolerant. Officially, you could be Syrian and worship Atargatis. You could be Egyptian and keep a little shrine to Isis in your kitchen. You could even light a candle to Mithras, and no one would blink, assuming you also bowed to Caesar. That's the unspoken rule: worship as you please. But don't forget who's boss. The early Christians. They broke that rule. Spectacularly. They said, no gods but one. They refused to swear loyalty to the genius of the emperor. They called earthly kingdoms temporary and unworthy of allegiance. They sang of resurrection, divine justice, and a kingdom not made by hands. You can imagine how well that went over. It's not even just theology, it's identity. Roman religion was public, celebrated with parades, festivals, feasts. Christianity was private, secretive, held behind closed doors. That alone made it suspicious. What kind of cult won't let you watch historians still argue whether Rome persecuted Christians for their beliefs or for their behavior? Maybe both. Belief was dangerous, but behavior even more so. Christians wouldn't fight in the legions, wouldn't swear oaths, wouldn't join public banquets if the wine had been poured for the gods. That's more than heresy. That's social sabotage. You pass the forum. A line of slaves is being marched by, their necks shackled, their heads down. Some whisper that the man leading them is a Christian landowner who was arrested for refusing to sell incense to the imperial cult. You can't confirm it. No one dares to speak too loudly. But it spreads anyway. Rome's favorite hobby is rumor. A senator walks past with his entourage. You nod? He doesn't look at you. That's good. Eyes bring attention. Attention, bring questions. Questions bring chains. You remember a story from last week about a man in Ostia who got pulled into court for refusing to light a candle during the public festival of Apollo. The magistrate offered him 3 chances. Just 3. Toss the incense, say the words, and go home. He refused. They stripped him, whipped him, and finally let the lions teach him theology. His bones were buried by night. His name wasn't recorded. You've started calling these men and women the nameless saints. They're the ones you'll never read about in Acts or sermons. The ones who lived, breathed, and died for a belief they couldn't prove but couldn't let go of. You used to wonder what gave them the courage. Now you wonder what makes you hesitate. You sit at a tavern bench, pretending to sip watered-down wine, while your ears do the real drinking. The group at the next table laughs a little too loudly for your comfort. Someone just called Christians cannibals. You freeze. The word hangs in the air like smoke. One of them elaborates. They eat their God's body, drink his blood, heard it from a trader in Antioch. The others snort. One makes a face like he's about to vomit. You want to correct him? Tell him that the Eucharist is symbolic, that no one's carving up corpses at communion. But you say nothing? You chew your bread slowly? You keep your face blank. Because today's joke is tomorrow's accusation. You leave early and walk past a brothel with a painted fresco of Bacchus getting far too comfortable with a satyr. That's legal. But your house church, a criminal enterprise. Early Christianity didn't just sound strange, it looked dangerous. Romans valued visible rituals, sacrificing a goat, parroting statues, burning incense. Christianity, it took place in silence. In homes, in whispers, outsiders saw no rituals. No, sacrifices. Just gatherings at night. The breaking of bread. Cryptic phrases like flesh and blood and born again. It didn't help that converts came from every class: slaves, soldiers, merchants, even a few aristocrats. If it were only the poor, maybe Rome wouldn't care. But influence spreads, and when the highborn mingle with the low-screened, the empire starts to itch. Historians still argue whether the accusations of incest and cannibalism were genuine misunderstandings or weaponized slanders. Either way, they worked. Love feasts sounds orgiastic. Brother and sister in Christ sounds incestuous. Eat my flesh, drink my blood sounds like you need a priest and a therapist. You pass a public latrine where graffiti scrawled in, charcoal reads death to the fish eaters. It's a joke. Probably. But you check behind you anyway. You duck into your domus, lock the door, and lean against it. You unwrap a bundle hidden beneath your tunic, a folded parchment with Greek script fading at the edges. It's part of the Gospel of Mark. A friend copied it by hand. The ink still smells like vinegar. You reread the last line, "For whoever wants to save their life will lose it. But whoever loses their life for me and for the gospel will save it." You set it down. Outside, a crier announces the next circus games. You wonder how many fish eaters will be on the roster. You sit in a cramped triclinium, knees touching the low table, and listen to the creak of the door as your host locks it twice. A pitcher of diluted wine is passed around, but no one's drinking. They're waiting. The elder begins with a reading. It's from Paul's letter to the Romans. You can't help but smirk at the irony, Paul. Writing to the very city that would kill him. The words come alive in the candlelight. "Do not conform to the pattern of this world," someone murmurs. You repeat the phrase under your breath like it's armor. This is your first time attending a love feast. There's no feast, just lentils and bread. No love either, unless you count the way everyone shares their food without measuring. You're a stranger, but they treat you like kin. A woman next to you slides a small bowl your way. Her fingers are missing their tips. You don't ask. The man leading tonight's gathering talks about martyrdom, not with flair or drama, but like he's describing something inevitable. We live in borrowed time. He says, Vadian borrowed bodies, but we're free. A child yawns. Another curls up beneath a stool. Someone opens a small box containing a crude wooden fish, barely carved, but kissed with reverence. You've never seen such conviction, and you've never been so terrified. It's not just the risk of arrest. It's the way these people refuse to play by Rome's rules. They don't curse their enemies. They don't seek revenge. They pray for those who persecute them. Rome doesn't understand that. Honestly, you don't either. Historians still argue whether early Christians wanted to be martyrs or merely accepted the risk. Some call it bravery. Others call it suicide by state. Tonight, you're not sure it matters. What matters is that they believe it's worth it. The meeting ends with a song quiet. Off key. Beautiful. You walk home under the stars. And for the first time, you don't feel alone. You don't even knock. You just push open the door and walk inside. But it's empty. The house is torn apart. Furniture overturned. Ashes scattered across the floor. You find a single sandal. Just one. Small. Worn. Belonged to the daughter of your friend Lydia. She was only 6. You sit on the floor. Something sticky coats your hand oil. Maybe wine? You wipe it on your tunic. A neighbor slips in behind you. No words. Just a slow shake of the head. Tarkan. She whispers. All of them. You nod. You knew that already. Rome has always feared gatherings behind closed doors. Even before Christianity, private meetings were viewed as potentially seditious. Clubs were banned, disbanded, or tightly regulated, but Christian households impossible to regulate, too quiet, too fluid, too ordinary. Any home could become a church. Any dinner, a sacrament. Any child? Prophet. Lydia's husband worked in the markets. That's probably what got them noticed. He refused to swear by Caesar when closing deals. Said something about truth needing no oaths. Brave. Stupid. Righteous. You recall what a Roman prefect once said. It's not what they believe, it's that they do it together. Historians still argue whether early Christians deliberately courted martyrdom or were simply unlucky targets. Either way, Rome was learning. It realized it couldn't arrest a religion, but it could make examples. You leave the house? That sandal stays with you. You pass a temple where priests sacrifice a bull. The crowd cheers. Blood splashes the altar. You wonder how many in that crowd would cheer your death. 2. You keep your eyes forward. You say nothing. You walk home like you believe in all the right gods. But inside, you're starting to feel something rising. Not fear. Something sharper. You wake up to chaos. The forum's already humming. The kind of noise that doesn't match the hour. People don't usually gather this early unless something's wrong. And you can tell something's very wrong. You pull your cloak tighter and drift toward the crowd. Not too fast. You don't want to seem too curious. At the steps of the Curia, a magistrate reads from a scroll. His voice is steady, but the words feel like knives. A fire broke out in one of the poorer districts near the Circus Maximus. Several insulae gone. Dozen dead. And someone whispered a name. Not a Roman name. A Christian one. That's all it takes. The scroll doesn't say Christians. Of course. It uses a phrase that's been floating around lately. Haters of mankind. A crowd favorite. Vague. Chilling. Useful. Because when you're looking for someone to blame, the less people understand, the better. And Christians. They've made misunderstanding an art form. You hear a voice behind you mutter. They eat in secret. They don't come to festivals. They pray to a man who died a criminal. Someone spits. Another whispers about magic. You glance at the Senate building, then at the golden statue of Nero gleaming nearby. He hasn't even shown up yet. But his fingerprints are already on this. Rome's political machine runs on tension. And when something explodes, literally or metaphorically, someone has to take the fall. In this case, Christians are the perfect culprit. New, foreign, unpatriotics, and most damning of all, organized. In secret, you've seen it before, in times of plague, drought, or political unrest. A little God-hating goes a long way. The people want someone to burn, and the state always generous hands them a match. You duck into an alley as the crowd surges forward. You can hear people naming names now. Lydia's, Marcus's, even yours. Almost. Historians still argue whether Nero himself orchestrated the fire or just took advantage of it. Some claim he watched Rome burn while playing his lyre. Others say that's slander. Either way, you're not looking for sheet music, you're looking for an escape. You dart through back streets. You know the paths well. You know where the guards patrol and where they pretend not to see. You know which baker keeps his cellar door unlatched, and which widow will hide a stranger for a coin and a whispered prayer. By the time you reach the edge of the Suburra, your tunic is torn. Your feet are blistered, and your mouth is dry. But you're not dead. Not yet. You crouch by a crumbling wall. Heart beat like a drum. And you finally whisper it aloud, "They're coming for us." You weren't even at the gathering. But you believe. You don't sacrifice. You don't swear by the emperor. That's enough. And now? Belief isn't just dangerous, it's radioactive. You've entered the long, smoky tunnel where survival and faith dance around each other with knives in hand. The guards are rounding people up. Nero needs a scapegoat. The people need someone to cheer for. And you. You probably won't survive this. You're not sure why they didn't arrest you. Maybe the guard was too lazy. Maybe he didn't recognize your face. Or maybe the bribe from last month bought you one more day. That's all it ever buys. Just one more day. You spend it at the edge of the city, crouched in the market square under a tattered awning. Dust cakes your lips, and the smell of dried fish almost makes you gag. You're watching a group of magistrates pass by, all wearing those ridiculous red-bordered togas that make them look like disgruntled birthday cakes. You've been waiting for a message from someone higher up in the faith. Maybe a plan. Maybe a warning. What you get instead is a scroll. It's not a gospel. It's a letter from Pliny the Younger. Well, a copy of a letter. He's a Roman governor in Bithynia, far from here, and apparently confused as all hell about how to handle this whole Christian mess. You read it slowly. He writes, "I interrogated them. Some denied it. Some admitted it. I gave them 3 chances. If they still confessed, I executed them. Then, the kicker, they meet before dawn. They sing hymns to Christ as to a god. They bind themselves by oath not to commit crimes. But to be honest, you blink, even Pliny is baffled. These people aren't criminals. They're boring, law-abiding, peaceful, but dangerous because they don't follow the approved script. Pliny writes to the Emperor Trajan, asking, "Is this the right way, Trajan?" in all his majestic ambiguity. Basically responds, "Yeah." Seems fine. Just don't hunt them unless they make noise. That's Roman policy in a nutshell. Persecute. But politely. Tolerate. Unless they become popular. Crush. But with paperwork. Historians still argue whether Trajan's policy was lenient or ruthless. Was he trying to protect the innocent? Or just avoid a PR disaster? You're not sure. You just know it means the pressure won't stop. It'll simmer. You fold the scroll and slip it under your belt. No one can see it. Possessing this is treason. You walk back toward the slums. Head low. The baths are filling up with gossip. A merchant is claiming to have witnessed a Christian sacrifice, a dog. Another swears he saw believers kissing each other's feet. You want to laugh? You want to scream? Instead, you keep walking. Someone spits at your feet. You don't look back. Tonight, the sky glows red. You tell yourself it's just the moon. But it's not. The glow rises from the Palatine, and it smells of smoke and flesh. You don't go near. You don't ask questions. You know better. Rumor has it Nero's putting on another spectacle. Christians. Crosses. Pitch and fire. Human torches. Someone says with a grin, as though describing a new form of garden lighting. You feel bile rise in your throat. You can't sleep. You wrap yourself in your cloak and walk through alleyways and silent corners, past shrines and shuttered taverns. You pass a statue of Minerva with her eyes conveniently looking the other way. You end up outside the Colosseum. It's empty now. The game's over. But you can still smell the animals, the sweat, the blood. You stare at the sand through the iron bars. You imagine it soaked red. You imagine someone you knew, someone quiet, kind, who once shared a crust of bread standing there, waiting. Rome doesn't just kill, it performs. Death here is a show. Alison, a warning etched in muscle and bone. And the Christians. They're becoming unwilling headliners. You remember the stories of Felicitas? 9 months pregnant. Forced into the arena beside her friend Perpetua. Of Blandina. The slave girl who withstood every torture they threw at her and still sang hymns. Of Ignatius. Who asked to be devoured by lions as a favor. A favor. Historians still argue whether these martyr accounts are fact or stylized fiction. Historians of viands and of vava, some say the writers embellished for drama. Others believe every word. You think truth and courage aren't always neat? Sometimes they're soaked in blood and scribbled down in a hurry. You whisper a prayer and turn to go. That's when you see it painted on the wall in charcoal. Christians are not afraid to die. And below it, scratched faintly, but we're so tired of watching. You don't sleep that night. You find her in a courtyard, feeding pigeons. She looks ordinary. Blind tunic, tired eyes. But the second she sees you, she stiffens. Like she's been waiting for someone to ask the right question. And you do. One word. Why? She sighs. Pours a handful of seeds into your palm. Because I believe you're not sure if that's bravery or madness. Her name is Aurelia. Mid-30s. Guido. Former temple scribe. Now, one of the most feared women in the city, not because of violence, but because she won't stop talking about Jesus. She's been arrested twice, beaten once, and still walks like the Forum owes her an apology. You sit with her. She tells you about the others. The ones who've gone missing. The ones in prison. The ones in hiding. But she also tells you about those who stayed, those who whispered hymns into each other's ears, even as the guards dragged them away. She laughs when she says, Rome thinks we're dangerous because we gather. Truth is, we're dangerous because we endure. You believe her. She slips you a scroll, Psalms translated into Greek. You ask if she's afraid. She says, Of course. Then, but fear doesn't mean I stop. Historians still argue whether these early Christian women were passive saints or quiet revolutionaries. Maybe both? Aurelia doesn't look like either. She looks like someone who's lost everything and still has more to lose. You leave her there? The birds circling overhead. She whistles softly. You think it might be a hymn? Later. At home. You unroll the scroll. You read until the words blur. You fall asleep clutching it. And for the first time in weeks, your dreams are quiet. You wake to distant cheers. At first, your half-asleep mind thinks it's a festival. Maybe Saturnalia come early. Or some senator's daughter just got married to a goat or something. Rome always finds an excuse to celebrate. But then you hear the chant, "Let them fight." And that's when your stomach turns. You know exactly what day it is. You edge toward the Colosseum. Not close enough to be seen, but close enough to hear the roar of the crowd. You smell sweat and blood, dust and roasted barley cakes. And underneath all that a sickly sweetness, burning pitch, inside the arena. They're not just gladiators today. They're prisoners. And among them, a few people you know, not well, but enough. The fish carver from the market. The girl who used to sing psalms while cleaning the bakery floor. You remember her voice more than her name? The games begin. At first, they're theatrical. Mock naval battles. Clumsy animal chases. You hear laughter, but when the gates open again, it changes. This time, no costumes. No props. Just people in rough tunics and iron shackles. The announcer calls them atheists. The irony almost makes you laugh. Because these so-called atheists believe with a fire Rome can't understand. They're pushed into the center of the sand. The crowd grows quiet. A lion paces behind a gate. Someone near you mutters, "Let's see if their God saves them now." You want to scream. But you don't. Because they don't. They don't beg. They don't plead. Some kneel. Some sing. One raises his hands. And for a moment, it looks like a blessing. And then the gate opens. The crowd erupts. Later, the officials will say they were criminals. Enemies of the state. But you know better. You saw their faces. You saw peace in their eyes where there should have been terror. Historians still argue whether Christians were always thrown to lions, or if that's just exaggerated Sunday school drama. But even if it didn't happen every day, it happened enough, and you just watched it happen again. You leave before it's over. You duck into an alley and sob into your cloak. You feel sick. Not from what you saw, but from how many people enjoyed it. And that night, when the stars rise above Rome's blood-soaked stones, you wonder something terrifying. Would you have stood there with them, or sat in the stands? You walk to the river at dawn. It's cold. Mist hangs over the water like a curtain, softening the outlines of the world. You follow the trail your friend told you about, barely a path. Really? Just broken reeds? Trampled earth? And hope. You arrive at a small cove, hidden behind an overhang of ivy. And there, you see them, 4 people, barefoot and wrapped in simple wool cloaks. A 5th stands in the shallows, arms raised. His voice is low, almost lost in the breeze. You stop behind a tree and watch. They're performing baptisms. Not the dramatic kind with choirs and candles. This is quiet, private, sacred. One by one, they step into the river. The leader speaks a few words, something about dying to the old life, rising into the new. The water isn't warm. They shiver, but their eyes shine. You feel like you're intruding on something holy. Baptism was always risky in Rome. It marked you, changed you, made you visible to those who knew what to look for. You were sealed. They said, claimed. From that moment forward, you didn't just believe you belonged, and Rome didn't like belonging. That wasn't state approved. You think back to your own near baptism? A moment of hesitation, a knock at the door, a scream, and it never happened. You told yourself you'd do it later, when it was safe. But safety, you're realizing, is an illusion. Historians still debate whether early Christians used rivers by necessity or theology. Some say it was just practical. No access to ritual baths. So rivers it was. Others say the flowing water symbolized cleansing and rebirth, in a way still pools never could. You don't know the answer. You just know that standing here, watching this quiet ritual unfold in the gray light of morning, you feel something shift inside you. Not guilt, not fear, just longing. You leave before they notice you, but the sound of the water stays with you all day. That night, you dream of stepping into the river, clothes heavy, heart light. The trouble starts with your neighbor. He's a respectable man, retired soldier, keeps his garden neat, worships all the proper gods, and keeps a statue of Jupiter on the windowsill. Just to be safe. You've shared bread with him, laughed at his terrible jokes, trusted him, so you're not prepared when you hear your name at the magistrate's office. He's accused you, not of theft, not of violence, but of belonging. Suspected Christian. The scroll reads, no trial, no proof, just suspicion. You feel your knees go weak. You expected Rome to notice eventually, but not from him. You remember something someone once said in a gathering? Our enemies won't always be the guards. Sometimes they're the people who mow your lawn. Okay, maybe not in those exact words, but the point holds. You're summoned for questioning. It's not an arrest yet, just a conversation. The magistrate greets you with a tight smile and a polite threat. These are uncertain times. He says, loyalty must be proven. He offers you an easy way out. Just light the incense. He says, motioning to the altar behind him, just a pinch. Say the words, to Caesar. Your mouth is dry. This is the moment you've imagined, or dreaded. One act, one gesture, and you can walk out clean and unmarked. Or you think of the river, of the Colosseum, of Aurelia feeding pigeons. You shake your head. He raises an eyebrow. You know what that means. You nod. He sighs. Annoyed more than angry. He's seen this before. He writes something down. We'll be in touch. He says. You walk out feeling hollow. Free. But also hunted. Historians still argue whether these early denouncements came more from fear or jealousy. Perhaps your neighbor just wanted your property. Or maybe your faith made him feel small. Either way, it worked. You double bolt your door that night, and you start sleeping in your shoes. Just in case. You're not alone. You realize it one night, when you hear whispering through the wall, your neighbor? The one who sells herbs and never makes eye contact? She's singing. Softly. A melody you recognize. A hymn. Ancient and gentle. You don't even know the words. Just the shape of the tune. You tap the wall twice. Silence. Then, a return tap. She knows. You press your ear to the plaster. She begins speaking. Slowly. Carefully. One verse at a time. A prayer. You whisper back. No names. Just fragments of scripture. Stitched into the night like a patchwork quilt. In the weeks that follow, it becomes a rhythm. A song without a melody. Two women speaking truth through brick and clay. Hidebut heard, and then, one night, you hear another voice. A child. Her daughter? You never knew she had one. They pray together, and for the first time in a long time, you cry not from fear, but from the strange, aching beauty of it all. Women in the early church didn't just attend. They led, taught, hosted, encouraged. They were the glue in a house of cards, constantly at risk of collapse. Rome saw them as harmless, but they were everywhere. Teaching in kitchens, baptizing in wells, smuggling scripture in their hair. Historians still argue how much authority women actually had. Some say they were never priests, never preachers. Others point to inscriptions, letters, even graffiti that suggest otherwise. You don't care about titles. Not tonight. Tonight, you're just grateful for her voice. Later, you slip a note under her door. Just one line. We believe the same. The next morning, you find a loaf of bread on your doorstep. Still warm. No name. But you know who made it? And for the first time, Rome feels a little less terrifying. You're in the marketplace again. Not to shop. You don't even bother pretending anymore. You're there to watch. A group of slaves walks past you quiet. Heads bowed, dressed in worn linen, their master trails behind. Barking orders like a bored auctioneer. But something about the second man catches your eye. His wrist. You glimpse a carved line of fish etched lightly into his bracelet. Decorative to most, but not to you. It's a signal. You follow. Slowly. He's careful. Never looking back. But he knows you're there. You trail him past the olive stalls. Past the gamblers, shouting near the bathhouse, until he dips into a side alley and disappears through a back door. You wait 5 minutes. Then follow. Inside is a dim room with cracked plaster and the scent of oil and charcoal. And there they are, more slaves. A dozen of them. Men. Women. Children. One still wearing a collar. They're gathered in silence. And when they see you, no one panics. One even nods in welcome. They are Christians. Like you. Maybe more than you. You sit beside a girl, maybe 11, her tunic threadbare, but her eyes full of something huge. Faith. Probably. Or courage. You envy her. They're discussing scripture, reciting from memory. No scrolls. Just words passed from mouth to mouth like bread. You learn something in that moment. You learn why Rome is afraid. Because this religion equalizes. Here, a slave speaks, while a freedman listens. Here, the child offers the prayer. Here, you belong because of belief, not birth. That's dangerous in a world that runs on hierarchy. Historians still argue whether Christianity truly disrupted the social order or merely offered a spiritual illusion of equality. You don't know. But watching a slave lead a prayer that leaves half the room in tears, that's not illusion. That's power. The door creaks. Everyone freezes. You hear footsteps. Then they pass. The room exhales. The child slips her hand into yours. You squeeze it. You stay until the candle burns low. And as you leave, the girl hands you a small piece of broken pottery with one word carved into it. Elpis. Hope. You're standing in front of the altar. Not by choice. The magistrate's office is warmer than expected. Incens smolders in a bronze dish. A statue of the emperor looms nearby blank-eyed. Expressionless. The ideal bureaucrat. A soldier rests a hand on your shoulder. Not hard. Just enough to remind you it's there. This is your third summons. You didn't speak last time. That was a mistake. Now they want a gesture. One pinch of incense. A muttered line to the divine Caesar. Ruler of the world. Nothing dramatic. Just obedience. The magistrate leans forward. He's young, unimpressed. He drums his fingers on the table and says what they always say. We don't care what you believe in your heart. This is for appearances. He points to the fire. Do it. And you go home. You stare at the incense. Behind you, someone coughs. Maybe another suspect. Waiting their turn. Maybe someone who did it. Someone who walked out free. Clutching a clean conscience, or at least a clean record. You could do it. Just this once. No one would know. But you'd know. You look at the flame. Then the statue. Then your hands. And slowly, you lower them. No? He sighs. That's treason. You understand? You nod. He waves you away. You'll be processed. The soldier grips your arm, not roughly, just mechanically. Like you're another scroll to be filed. Historians still argue how common these incense trials were. Some say they were rare and exaggerated later. Others insist they were widespread. The empire's favorite game of chicken. Either way, the script is always the same. Pretend or perish. You're marched to a holding room. It smells of oil and mildew. A woman is there already older, with silver hair and a face carved by grief. She doesn't speak. But when you sit beside her, she reaches over and gently holds your hand. Neither of you looks at the fire. The cell is smaller than you expected. It's not the chains that make it unbearable. It's the silence. That hollow, waiting kind of silence where thoughts echo too loud and hope feels like a joke you've heard 100 times before. You count the cracks in the wall. You memorize the drip of water from a leak above your head. You name the rats. There are 3, and quietly assign them ranks in the Roman Senate. Just to make yourself laugh. The door creaks open, and a man steps in. Not a soldier. Not a guard. A scribe. He carries a scroll. A thin brush. Ink that smells of vinegar and soot. I need your answer. He says, you raise an eyebrow. To what he reads aloud you. Being a citizen of Rome and subject to the emperor are requested to affirm loyalty by public sacrifice. Refusal will be interpreted as sedition. He lays out the parchment. At the bottom, a blank space. Your name, a space for a mark. You stare at it. This is what they're offering now. A shortcut. A piece of paper. No smoke. No ritual. Just your consent. A libellus, a certificate that says, I did the thing. Even if you didn't, you don't even have to perform the sacrifice. Just say you did. Lie to the paper. Lie to the empire. The man watches. He's seen hundreds of faces like yours. Some sign, some don't. Historians still argue how widespread the libelli system really was. Some say it was Rome's way of streamlining oppression. Others believe it was a gift, a bureaucratic loophole to spare lives without losing face. You pick up the brush, and then you stop? Because a woman you knew, Aurelia, once told you Rome wants your body. But your yes? Your yes is worth more than any blood. You put the brush down? He won't. The scribe sighs. Then we're done. As he leaves, you notice a pile of other scrolls in his bag. Some clean, some blood-stained. You wonder which one yours will be? They call it the test. But it's not a test of loyalty. It's a test of fear. You're standing in line behind 10 others, all waiting their turn. The air smells of sweat and brass and scorched grain. Ahead, a marble platform glistens with spilled oil. On it a brazier and a bowl of ash. A young man is up now, maybe 17, shaking like a leaf. The priest holds out a pinch of incense. To the emperor. He says, as though offering bread. The boy hesitates, then drops it. A puff of smoke. A sigh of relief. The crowd nods. One more saved. Or condemned. Depending on who's watching. Your turn. You step forward. The brazier crackles. The official says, name. You give it. He says, sacrifice. You say nothing. He says, last chance. You whisper, no. And suddenly it's over. Chains. A shove. A smudge of ash on your tunic. You're dragged back to a holding cell where others wait. You recognize one. A merchant? Quiet. Always gave extra weight at the market. He smiles at you now. Welcome to the club. He says. You try to laugh. You can't. The man beside you shows you his libellus. It's fake, he says, almost proudly. Paid. $5 for it. You blink, and they believed it. He shrugs. They wanted to believe it. Historians still argue whether the persecution under Decius was empire-wide or patchy. Some claim it was chaotic magistrates improvising rules. Guards ignoring orders. Others insist it was systematic. Efficient. Cold. You're starting to think both are true. The merchant leans in. They don't want martyrs. He says, they want silence. As long as you disappear quietly, they're happy. You nod. But your silence is a form of defiance now. Your body may be chained, but your answer still echoes. No in chance. No Alice. No Livelius. Just this. You hear whispers, even in chains. Not from your cellmates, though. There are plenty of them, but from the guards. The scribes. The magistrates, moving in and out with hurried footsteps and nervous faces. They're saying something about forged libelli. Falsified certificates. It's spreading. You're not surprised. A man you met in Holding told you weeks ago. Truth bends under pressure. But parchment bends easier. His friend, a young scribe, had begun selling forged certificates to terrified Christians. All the right ink. The correct seals. Even the official phrasing, has sacrificed to the gods of Rome, except they hadn't. Now Rome has a problem. Because if the punishment depends on paperwork, and the paperwork can be faked, then the entire system begins to crumble under its own hypocrisy. You're taken to another room? This one smells like vinegar and panic. A magistrate paces. We know the libelli are circulating. He mutters, and we will find those who forged them. You keep your mouth shut. He turns to you. Did you purchase one? Do you know someone who did? You shrug. He slams a scroll down. Forgery is treason. So is belief. You say, Hephriesis. And then, for just a second, you see it. The flicker of something human behind his eyes. Not compassion. Not guilt. Just fatigue. He's tired. Of the lies. Of the games. Of the endless, fruitless purge. Historians still argue whether these libelli scandals were widespread or localized to places like Alexandria and Carthage, but the panic they caused, that was very real. Rome was built on order, and the idea that someone could undermine it with a well-inked lie, unacceptable. You marched back to your cell. The man beside you is trembling. He whispers, "They took my wife. She bought a certificate for our daughter. They said they'd spare her. You ask? Did they?" He doesn't answer. You spend the night staring at the ceiling, wondering which lie Rome fears more, the one on parchment, or the one in its heart. You're walking through the Suburra again, but differently now. Hunched. Hooded. Invisible? The marketplace buzzes like it always does. Chickpeas. Figs. Garum. News. But beneath the surface, there's a new kind of trade blooming. Hidden. Whispers passed in handshakes. Tiny fish drawn in the dirt. Then kicked away just as fast. You're here for scripture. Not a scroll. That's too obvious. No one's smuggling full parchments anymore. Not unless they've got a death wish. No. What you're after are fragments. Torn pages? Half a gospel. A few verses etched into bark or cloth or broken pottery. You find her behind the olive stand. She looks like a vendor. Wrinkled. Weather-beaten. Chewing a reed. But when you hand her a coin and ask for figs, she gives you something wrapped in linen. You walk away? Not too fast. Back home, you unwrap it. Inside a verse from Matthew. Faded ink. Greek letters you can barely make out. But the meaning is unmistakable. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness. You sit with it for hours. It's only 15 words, but you'd trade your entire income to keep them. Later that week, you return. She's gone. Historians still argue how early Christians managed their underground economy of faith. Some say it was coordinated, organized. Others think it was spontaneous, chaotic, born of necessity. But the result, a network more resilient than anyone imagined. Bread sellers hiding verses in loaves. Fishermen carving gospel into crates. Midwives whispering the Beatitudes between contractions. The scriptures didn't survive in libraries, they survived in lives. You take your fragment and sew it into your cloak, just in case. If they find it, you're done. But if you lose it, you'll forget who you are. It's just a funeral club. That's what they tell you. You knock twice on a wooden door deep in the Esquiline district. A man opens it, looks you over, then steps aside. You descend a staircase into what looks like a storeroom, dimly lit by oil lamps, baskets, jars, a few worn statues of Roman deities on shelves, just in case someone raids the place. But you don't see mourning. You see worship. 20 or so people gathered in a circle. No wailing. No dirges. Just a silence so deep, it feels like prayer. In the center lies a woman, dead, wrapped in linen. On her chest rests a fish-shaped pendant. No chance. No coins for Karen. Just one voice reciting the Psalms. This isn't a burial. It's a resurrection rehearsal. Roman law allowed collegia associations for burial, trade, and mutual aid. Technically, any citizen could form one. And many Christians did, disguising churches as funeral societies. Rome turned a blind eye until someone made too much noise. Historians still argue how many early churches hid behind these collegia. Some claim it was widespread and clever. Others believe it was rare and risky. But right now, standing in this cellar, as they sing about eternal life over a body growing cold, you can tell this isn't just legal sleight of hand. It's survival theology. You're offered wine, bread, nothing grand, just enough. You eat in silence. Afterward, someone presses a small coin into your hand. Not currency, a token. One side a fish, the other, the word Adelphos brother. You're not a club member, but you're family now. You thought the hardest part would be the fire, the cell, the trial. You were wrong. The hardest part is what comes after. You're free now, technically. Released, unchained, but not invisible. Rome keeps lists, and once your name is on one, it doesn't vanish. You try to return to normal. Buy bread. Visit the baths. Avoid eye contact. But the looks come anyway. From neighbors, merchants. The fishmonger who used to wink at you now won't meet your eyes. Your landlord raises your rent without explanation. And the worst is among your own. Because not everyone stayed silent. Some signed the libellus. Some sacrificed. Some named names. And now, inside, what's left of the church? There's a crack. Thin at first, but growing. You hear whispers. She confessed. He recanted. They gave up the scriptures. It hurts. Because you don't know how to feel. Angry, forgiving, jealous that they survived while others didn't, a man speaks up during the next gathering bold. Loud. There must be discipline. He says, "No traitors among us." But another voice, tired, older, asks softly, "Or should there be mercy?" That silence returns. The same one from the cell, but colder. Historians still argue about the lapsi, those who lapsed during persecution. Some churches welcomed them back with open arms. Others rejected them entirely. Councils were called. Bloodless wars waged over the theology of forgiveness. You sit in the corner and say nothing. You don't know who's right. All you know is, you're still here. And that has to mean something. It starts with a knock. Not the pounding of soldiers. Not the whisper of informants. Just a gentle rap at your door. 3 short taps. Then silence. You wait. Then open. It's him. Lucius. You haven't seen him since the trials. Since the brazier. Since he dropped the incense. Said the words. And walked away free while you were shackled and marched into the dark. He looks older. Thinner. Eyes sunken. He doesn't wear a cloak. Doesn't hide the scar across his cheek from the night he tried to stop a guard from arresting his sister. You didn't know that part. I need to speak. He says, "You let him in?" He doesn't sit. Just stands, wringing his hands, staring at the floor like the dust might forgive him if he stares long enough. "Idenilhim," he says, 3 times. You both hear the echo in that phrase of another denial, another man, another fire in a courtyard. Long ago, "I want to return," he whispers. You feel your jaw clench, because it's not simple. You lost friends. You bore the shame. You didn't fold. And yet here he is. Still breathing. Still with his name. His limbs. His home. But not his peace. The early church wrestled with this. What to do with the lapsi? The fallen ones? Some said, no return ever. Others demanded penance. Some wanted grace to overflow. Historians still argue whether the church's eventual policies were too strict, too soft, or just necessary. But tonight, policy doesn't matter. What matters is the man in front of you. I'll accept any punishment. He says, but I want to believe again. You nod. Not yes. Not yet. But your door stays open. And that's the first step. You're standing on a windswept hill outside the city walls. It's late. The stars are out. And around you, dozens gather in silence. Not a riot. Not a mob. A vigil. They hold candles, some flickering wildly. Others steady. No firebrands. Just beeswax and trembling hands? They've come to remember a woman named Damaris. You didn't know her? But her name has been whispered from Antioch to Gaul. She died last week. Not from torture. Not from lions. From hunger. Imprisoned for refusing to sign a libellus. Refused food. Refused visitors. Chose silence over survival. Now she's more than a name. She's a martyr. But the word feels heavy tonight. You listen as a man recites a letter she wrote, smuggled out in a hollow reed. I did not because Rome is cruel. She wrote, but because Christ is worth even this. There's a pause, a ripple through the crowd. A woman nearby sobs quietly. You think about how many you've lost, How many weren't even trying to be heroes? Just ordinary people with jobs and gardens and kids who wanted to worship in peace. And you wonder, did persecution spread the faith or distort it? Historians still argue both sides. Some claim the blood of martyrs fertilized the church, that their bravery drew more converts than any preacher ever could. Others say it turned suffering into spectacle, that it created a hierarchy of holiness no one could live up to. You don't know who's right. All you know is tonight. You're holding a candle, and for once, it doesn't feel like resistance. It feels like love. You're in a tent, not your home, not a prison. A military camp on the banks of the Tiber, watching fires crackle beneath a red-tinged sky. Because tonight, Rome is changing. Word spreads like lightning. Constantine, general and heir to imperial chaos, is marching on the city. Maxentius, Rome's current ruler, is fortifying. Troops assemble. Priests offer sacrifices. The gods are busy tonight. But Constantine, he's seen a vision. That's what they're saying. That the night before battle, he looked to the heavens and saw a sign, a cross of light above the sun, with the words, "In this sign, conquer." You think it's nonsense? You also want it to be true. Because if this man, this non-Christian, believes enough to paint crosses on his soldiers' shields, maybe the tide is turning. Maybe faith won't mean chains anymore. Maybe tomorrow, everything changes. Historians still debate whether Constantine truly saw a vision or whether it was clever propaganda. Some say he was hedging bets. Others that he had a genuine conversion. But one thing is certain, the Battle of the Milvian Bridge was a hinge in history. And you watch it happen from the hill. You see the smoke rise, hear the clash, smell the iron and sweat of empire grinding against itself. Then, silence. And in that silence, a shift. Rome doesn't fall, but it cracks, and something new pushes through. You clutch the fish-carved pendant at your neck. Not yet outlawed, not yet legal, but maybe, just maybe seen. You read the words over and over, not chiseled in stone, not copied in secret, but declared publicly, officially, by two emperors in the city of Milan. The Edict of Milan. It's not poetry, but to you, it might as well be scripture. All persons shall have the liberty to worship as they choose. You never thought you'd live to see it. It doesn't say Christianity is the truth. It doesn't crown your bishop or canonize your martyrs. But it says something far more revolutionary in its own quiet way. We're not criminals anymore. You walk the streets differently now. Head up, eyes forward. You don't hide your pendant. You don't flinch when someone says the word Christian. You even hear it in public said out loud. Like it isn't dangerous anymore. But Rome doesn't change overnight. Some guards still sneer. Some temples still ring with song to Mars and Apollo. Some neighbors still whisper behind closed shutters. You attend a gathering above ground for the first time. No catacombs. No funeral disguise. Just a wide room. An open door. And light streaming through stained linen. And you weep. Because, for so long, your worship was a whisper. A tremble, a risque. Now it's alive. Historians still argue whether the Edict of Milan truly marked freedom for Christians. Some call it a turning point, others a footnote. After all, persecution didn't vanish. Not everywhere. Not immediately. But the scale had shifted. You sit beside Aurelia. Yes. She's still here. Wrinkled now. Her silver hair bound with a red cord. She sees your tears. Don't cry. She whispers, this is only the beginning. And somehow, you believe her. You flinch when the first stone hits the statue. Not because you love the statue it was of Serapis. And honestly, it always gave you the creeps. But because it happened so fast, one moment, the temple stands as it has for centuries grand, flanked by columns, its steps worn smooth by prayer and sandal alike. The next, a mob is smashing its marble face in with hammers and righteous fury. And the ones doing it Christians, not the kind you used to hide with in catacombs, not the trembling voices behind closed doors. These are loud, proud, armed with imperial favor and a list of temples to cleanse. You step back into the shadow of an alley and watch as another idol topples. This isn't persecution. This is vengeance. After Constantine's so-called conversion, the empire doesn't outlaw paganism. Not yet, but something shifts. Favor becomes policy. Bishops gain influence. Temples lose funding. And when emperors like Theodosius come to power, tolerance vanishes. Paganism isn't just disrespected, it's illegal. Historians still argue whether Christians meant to destroy or simply reform Rome's soul, whether they wanted justice or just payback. You're too stunned to answer. Because last year, you were afraid to carry a fish pendant. This year, they're tearing down Jupiter's altar. You find Aurelia again. You expect her to cheer, but she's quiet. She says, we were taught to endure, not to crush. And suddenly, you see it, the subtle tremble in her hands. Not of fear, but of grief. Because victory, when dressed in wrath, doesn't always feel like salvation. You sit in a basilica that used to be a courthouse, where, once they judged theft and land disputes, now they argue about heresy. Not paganism. That's passé. Now the new danger is Arianism. Donatism? Pelagianism, names that sound like exotic diseases but spread faster than any plague. It's dizzying. You hear bishops shout about whether Christ is begotten or made, whether grace is earned or gifted, whether a bishop who denied the faith under persecution can baptize anyone at all. You miss the catacombs, because back then, the lines were simple. Rome hated you. Christ loved you. Now your enemies wear the same tunics. Quote, the same scriptures. Sing the same hymns, but mean something very different. The bishop of your town has just declared another faction, anathema, excommunicated, cut off. And you don't even fully understand what they did wrong. Historians still debate whether the church's turn inward, this obsession with doctrinal purity, was necessary or tragic. Was it the natural growth of a maturing faith? Or the first sign that power had replaced passion? You look around the room. No torches, not chains, just politics. But the fear feels the same. Because now it's not lions at the gate, it's knives in your circle. And when someone calls your friend a heretic for hesitating during a creed, you feel it. The old danger. Reborn in new robes. You walk slowly, down a road carved by pilgrims, pressed flat by hundreds of feet, just like yours. The path curves through hills outside the city, past olive groves and crumbling aqueducts. And at the end, you see it? A small shrine. Nothing grand. Just a stone slab. A crude cross. And a few wilted flowers left behind by trembling hands. But you know the name etched into the rock? Perpetua. A woman who chose beasts over betrayal. A legend. A sister. You kneel. And for a moment, you forget Rome. Her laws. Her emperors. You remember the ones who came before? Pilgrimage isn't legal yet. Not officially. But no one's stopping you. Not anymore. The gods look the other way. The priests sometimes join. The church hasn't claimed this place. But it will. Soon. Every year. More shrines appear. More names added to the memory of the faithful. Names no emperor canerase. Historians still argue how much of this memory is fact, and how much is myth. Did Perpetua really write her diary in prison? Did the martyrs really sing as flames consumed them? Or did later scribes sweeten the stories for the next generation? You sit with that tension. Because memory isn't about facts. It's about faithfulness. And here, among stones and song and silence, you feel it? The weight of what they carried, and the hope that maybe, just maybe, someone will remember you. 2. You're in the scriptorium now. Your fingers ink-stained. Your eyes strained by candlelight. You're helping copy the Passio of Cyprian. A story of a bishop who faced execution with more grace than you show in traffic? You're not a monk. Not yet. But in this strange, new Rome. Anyone with steady hands and a love of stories can serve the cause. And these stories, they're everywhere. Tales of martyrs. Legends of visions. Dreams that look suspiciously like political statements copied, circulated, canonized. Some you know are true. Some, maybe not. But they matter. Because the faith didn't just survive through courage. It survived through narrative. You write the words carefully. He was led to the place of execution. And when the sword fell, he did not flinch. You pause. You wonder how many flinched, how many ran, how many were forgotten. But not Cyprian. He's a saint now. Historians still argue about the formation of Christian martyrdom literature, how much was preserved, how much was rewritten, how much was invented. You've seen edits. You've made a few. Names cleaned. Facts softened. Miracles added like a garnish on hard bread. But tonight, you don't feel like a forger. You feel like a witness. Not to facts. To meaning. And when the candles burn low, and your fingers cramp, and your eyes blur, you smile. Because somewhere, in another century, someone will read these words, and maybe believe just enough to stand. You walk alone at night. Not in fear. In memory, the streets of Rome have changed. No more secret signs. No more midnight baptisms in freezing rivers. Now there are churches, altars, banners flying the Chiro. Your faith is no longer a whisper. It's an anthem. But something aches. You pass a marble basilica built where a catacomb entrance once stood. You remember the torchlight, the silence, the prayers shared in whispers and tears. Now, tourists, you pass a forum where Christians once died. There's a plaque now. A shrine. Neat. Safe. You sit by the Tiber. The moon ripples on the water. You close your eyes. You remember Lydia? Aurelia? The child who gave you the word hope. You wonder where their names went? Not in books, not in stained glass, but in the story. And you've endured the worst the Empire could throw at you. Fire, iron, silence. And you're still here? So you pray not loudly. Just a breath, thanking the one who saw you, who held you, who never asked you to be strong, only faithful. Historians may forget you, but heaven won't. And now, the streets grow quiet. The markets sleep. The city exhales. The echoes of sandals and shouts fade beneath the hush of nightfall. Even the Tiber flows softer. You close your eyes. You see not Rome, but all the faces that made this journey worth walking. The bold, the trembling, the faithful, the forgotten. You remember each whisper in the dark, each footstep in the dust, each flicker of a candle passed hand to hand. None of them grand, but all of them real. And isn't that the story of faith? Not a blaze, but a spark. Not a roar, but a song in the shadows. You don't need the names anymore, just the memory, just the truth that what survived wasn't an empire, but a hope that outlasted it. So let the night wrap around you now. Let the candle flicker low. You've heard the story. You've carried it. You've become part of it. Sleep well. Now, you are remembered.